Welcome, everyone, to the C-Suite Sales and Marketing Perspectives podcast. I'm Steve McDonald, your host. Today, we have a phenomenal conversation with an expert guest. We have on Barbara Toens. Now, Barbara, you are the Global Chief Marketing Officer for Gantrex. You actually have a PhD in pricing, which is fantastic. And that's going to bring a lot of expertise to what we're talking about here today. One of the things that I learned, which was fantastic, is you actually were a professional tennis player and played in all the biggest tournaments all over the world. That's just a phenomenal background and something to be very proud of. What I would love to do is, before we get started, and we're going to talk about how marketing truly drives profitable growth and what is our role as CMOs in order to do that. But before we get into that, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your background.
Great. First of all, thanks a lot for having me, Steve. Looking forward to our conversation. And yes, maybe as introduction, you're right. I might have a slightly different background with having a pricing focus as part of my marketing education, but I'm sure we'll touch on that a little later on in the conversation, as I see it as part of a holistic marketing function, really. And yeah, like you said, I'm the CMO of Gantrex. Gantrex is an industrial engineering company. We deliver solutions for cranes and crane rail systems. We have offices in 25 countries or so. So with that, the marketing position is also a truly global role with all the cultural differentiation implications. And yeah, in terms of my role, I cover let's say, the classical marketing aspects, including, of course, lead generation, but my responsibilities also include strategic pricing. In terms of background, I actually started in the automotive industry for Ford and what used to be Chrysler Jeep at that time, which for any marketing career, I find a perfect starting point because it taught me so much about all aspects of, let's say, classical marketing. I then moved on a bit more into industrial, or let's still call it B2B marketing, which added a bit more of a strategic perspective to my marketing responsibilities. If I would summarize high level now, my main focus or main expertise, which I try to deliver in daily life as well, it's a lot about building brands and then monetizing that brand power via pricing, to really ensure value delivered is value captured. And all that, of course, only possible with having the most important person in the business, the customer, at center of everybody's mind.
We're going to dissect that in a big way. But what I want to do is I want to start out. When you become a C-suite, you still have responsibilities, functional responsibilities in marketing, but you're now an executive of the business. You're responsible for being a part of that executive team that plans for long-term strategic growth of the business. When you joined, or from your perspective, what has that done for your responsibilities and then the impact that you can have on the business?
That's a very interesting question. First of all, I think it's so important to have the marketing voice on the executive table, because I think we bring in marketing a very different perspective and expertise. We really ensure that all discussions and decisions focus on the customer. What will it do to the customer? What impact will it have on the customer? And I think the role we play in executive teams is also to ensure every decision is considered with an outside-in approach, instead of the probably more typical inside-out. We are strong at this, we can do this, and then we'll find a way to market it. It starts with the customer. What are the real needs? With a true understanding, how can we bring solutions? And I think as marketing, we push for becoming a partner of the customer instead of just one of many suppliers. And I think that's the special view of marketing, which from personal experience also takes a while to have it recognized, that marketing is more than fun visuals, having a fun time and generating some leads. No, we do have a bottom line impact as well if we approach it in a holistic way. And I also see it as our job and probably our natural capability. We are good at communicating externally, but to be effective, we need to do it internally as well. We work closely with sales naturally as being a commercial team, to have close relations with finance, with innovation, with product development, to continue bringing that customer view and keep the conversation going. All that also happening at the executive table.
You spent so much there that I want to unpack, because there are a lot of B2B CMOs that have imposter syndrome.
Yes.
They're looked upon as running a department as one of the largest cost centers in the business. Their job is lead generation and, yes, long-term branding. But if we're not helping to fill that funnel and that job's not being done to the satisfaction of sales, then all of a sudden kind of the fingers start pointing our way. And this isn't a point of view. We've had so many CMOs coming on, and they talk about how this is a constant conversation that they're having inside of the CMO communities that they're in and things like that. So what you just did is you just talked about how CMOs have a seat at the table. There's not a company out there that doesn't say, no, we don't want to be customer focused. We're not customer obsessed. Everybody wants to be. But the degree that they actually are makes a huge difference. And you started talking about something that was moving towards this deep understanding of the customer. So when we spoke before, you talked about how you didn't believe that most companies did have a deep understanding. They had more of a familiarity with their customers. What did you mean by that?
From experience throughout companies I worked for, and what I see on the market is there is a high, I would almost say, superficial belief in data. We gather customer data, we know demographics, we know purchasing habits, so we must know the customer. But having data to understand customer activities is a must, but it doesn't mean you truly know a customer, because that's just above the surface. What I see as the marketing role is really to go below the surface, because that's what's the motivations behind certain activities of a customer. Is it because the customer is under cost pressure? Is it because they're expanding globally? What are their strategic plans? To understand the why of customer actions, for me, that is a true, combines with the more superficial data to a true understanding. And I think the specific need for marketing to bring this understanding is because for us, it's clear that everything on the customer side is a perception. Our brand is perceived differently by you than by your best friend. The value we deliver, we each have a personal perception, which is impacted by our experience, by our peers, by our use of a product or service. And to understand what drives that perception, that's, for me, the holistic approach to having a really customer-centric view. And from there, from that knowledge, you can step on and become really a solutions partner for the customer. But you can't do it on just data you have on your laptop.
And a lot of companies, we have more data than we've ever had before. So it is easy to think, wow, we've got more data to understand our customer than we've ever before. Just dig deep in there.
Yeah.
And then, boy, on top of that, we have sales are having conversations with prospects all the time. Customer success is having conversations with customers. We're talking to prospects and customers. We're getting all this data. We pretty much have what we need. But you had a unique perspective, which I loved, which is that when customers or prospects are talking to sales, right, that is a very specific environment. And there's like a shield that's up. You're being sold to. The amount that you're going to open up and truly talk about your challenges, and something that I looked up since you and I last talked, Dawn, which is like the biggest recording company of sales conversations, they did a huge study. Like 3,000-4,000 different sales conversations. And you know what they found out? That the sales rep talks on average 2/3 to 3/4 of the time.
Yeah. Not a surprise, huh? It's a sales job.
And then you look at customer success conversations and you say, okay, their goal is to put out fires, answer questions, and cross-sell and upsell. You would never define or design a true deep, as you characterize it, deep understanding learning program of the customer and run it through existing processes that have a different set of context, a different set of goals and outcomes in mind, right? But we use that data and those conversations as a proxy to really understanding our customers. Now, here's where I think this all leads. And it was the second thing that you brought up. We are, as B2B sellers to B2B buyers, we have less trust than we have ever had. You could look at like global element index, trust index. In the United States, it's going down the fastest. In Europe, it's going down extremely fast. 74% of B2B buyers don't believe the customer evidence we present to them. Over 60% of buyers think that salespeople are misleading intentionally, and that if you put them on a hierarchy of who is trusted the most, salespeople are down at the bottom. So this is the environment we have, and you wonder why they're waiting longer and longer. They're doing more and more of their research, and they don't want to talk to us until the very end of the process. Put 1 and 1 together, and it clearly equals 2. So here's my question to you. In that kind of an environment, what do we need to do? And your answer to that on our previous conversation is dig deeper into the customer and the understanding of the customer. Why do you think that is the anecdote, right, for what I call the trust epidemic that's happening here?
Let me start from a different angle. I started at Gantrex 7 years ago. And what I started to initiate right from the beginning was VOC calls, voice of the customer calls, but conducted by marketing. Initial reaction from sales colleagues across every region was, oh, come on, Barbara, what do you want to know about my customer? I can tell you. You don't need to bother him. I know my customer. And I said, you will be surprised when we talk to them. You hear things you have never heard about. Anyway, we got to start VOCs. And that for me is part of the trust building story. First of all, like you said, if sales managers talk to their customers all the time, but it's always a transactional relationship. And from the customer point of view, I would say there's always the price elephant in the room. Because when I talk to my sales guy, in a way, my final objective is still to get more for a lower price. He's my transactional contact. If marketing steps in, first of all, we conduct such an interview very differently. You talked about the share of talking done. The marketing person well-trained to do a VOC to the customer isn't even obviously steering the conversation. We are guiding it from the background and having the customer narrate their challenges, their story, and we guide it by questions that show we understand the customer business. For me, that's number one, to build trust. If you randomly ask me questions, I'm at one point like, come on, please do your homework first. I understand your business. I get you to talk. And honestly, Steve, we had many VOCs done where at the end, the customer said, in this case, Steve is one of our guys to conduct the VOCs, that, Steve, my goodness, you got me thinking about topics and strategy I wasn't fully aware of. Thanks for this conversation and for helping me clear my mind on the way forward. And I think another reason why marketing needs to conduct the VOCs is twofold. For one, for us, it's natural to feedback findings and conclusions across all company. We don't keep it for ourselves to say, cool, we can build bigger, greater campaigns, good for us. We feed it back to innovation. Hey, customer has this need. Maybe you look into developing the service, into operations, into sales, of course. And I think another distinctive factor is sales talks to active customers. For a good VOC, we talk to all kinds of customers. We talk to lost customers we haven't seen doing business with us for 3 years. We try to get in touch. And something I find very impactful, we do what we call post-mortems after big projects. So we have a big project bid, we lost. And if I ask sales, why did we lose? Oh, price. The competitor was 15% cheaper. What do you think? Can I compete? So that's where we say, let's do a post-mortem call with the customer. Sales says, oh, I can tell you the answer. He will point out the price. And we say, no problem. Let's see what else we can do. So when we conduct these calls, first of all, the challenge is to overcome this deadbeat, oh, it was price answer, because there's more behind. Why is a competitor cheaper? Did they deliver less? Then let's learn what was a good enough offer. Maybe we overspec by not understanding the customer need. Did they deliver the same, but then it was at a much cheaper price? Maybe the level of product or service quality was not comparable, which takes us to a learning. Either we didn't communicate that value to the customer with all the impact on their business, or maybe that high quality level of a specific service wasn't really what the customer needed at this time. So as an outcome of these VOCs, we have lots of learnings, more customer insight, and I felt every single one customers appreciated in the end, because they started it somewhat defensively. So like, yeah, just lower your price and I consider you. In the end, sharing their interest, their story and their decision-making process, and appreciating that we say, thank you, we want to improve next time. We want to deliver better proposals to you. So that's for me what sets a true VOC apart from a sales discussion with customers. It brings so much more value.
Oh my gosh. So if they're the highest voice of authority and we're not learning the kind of things that you're talking about from the voice of the customer, then we're flying blind. We're trying to do this with one hand tied behind our back.
Yes.
Let me ask a question you may not anticipate, but I bet you I know what the answer is. On both sides of the spectrum, after you did these voice of the customer calls, which I'm sure is an ongoing process, what does that do with the relationship, both internally with sales, when you're feeding now this kind of information that they don't have? Because there is a very large alignment issue in the B2B world between marketing and sales. And then what did it do for the relationship with the customers that you were talking to? So both sides.
Interesting one. I would say sales, in a way, has a natural hesitation to open that door to marketing, always thinking, oh, they will finger points like, oh, you didn't understand this point. To overcome this, what we did was, we now make it a habit to have the key account sales manager of that respective customer just listen in. It's understood. He cannot step into the conversation, but we want him to just listen in. We explained it to the customer like, he is your key contact. It's for relationship building. With that way, sales here, this is no finger pointing or deep dive discussion on what did our sales not do to make you perfectly happy. They see it's an open-minded discussion. And to be fair, I would say 95% of our sales managers afterwards came to us and said, thank you. Actually, I have actionable insights now. I get back to the customer and I work on bringing a solution for a specific challenge I just learned now. So in the end, they are highly appreciative, and we then tackle it from a commercial team. For me, this is sales and marketing perspective. On the customer side, for me, I see them viewing it as an essential step to seeing Gantrex as a trusted partner, as an expert partner who cared about their real long-term development challenges, market challenges, and somebody they can ask a question to. Very often in these calls, our guys get a technical question, which they can either answer or say, hey, I put you right in touch with our expert. There's no charge to that, obviously. This is just we provide our expertise. And the more you do that, And if it's aligned with an overall value delivery and communication across all touch points, this builds trust, but it takes time. But then it's a cohesive approach. You talk rich content, you deliver rich content, you walk your talk, and then you are believable. And then you are really a trusted partner, which makes all the difference, I think.
Yeah. The vendors talk transactionally. Vendors talk about what they do and the challenges that you have that we can address. But if you can understand the greater challenges that they have to deal with for their success, and you can lend advice, and it may not even be something that you directly do, but if they can see that you're seeing them holistically, like you said there, and truly, honestly trying to learn and trying to help, then that transitions you out of being a vendor in that transactional world. And at the same time, it helps the sales team understand that. I did probably 8 series of podcasts, 8 different episodes on why do B2B CMOs fail so quickly. The number one issue was misalignment with the sales department. The number one issue. And it was because sales didn't feel like there was good value coming from marketing. And in fact, from an industry perspective, the content that marketing creates for sales, over 2/3 of it is never used. In fact, sales doesn't even think it has any value. Right?
Yeah.
Now, we can unpack that and a lot of that, right? But there's a lot that happens there. But the number one thing that marketing can do is be that voice of the customer. Most B2B companies do not have a chief customer officer.
Yeah.
But marketing, we're the department that has all the connective tissues to every single department, right? And if we see them as our internal customers, and how do we make them more successful? The number one way to do that is by bringing the voice of the customer to them. I think it's brilliant.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, here's where your pricing background comes in, because listed on the top frustrations for B2B buyers with the sales process is lack of transparency on pricing. You got to dig, and it's so customized and complex that they feel like they have to go through numbers of different rounds and meetings just to get to a price. You've got a PhD in pricing. I would just love to hear your perspectives on transparency, trusted partner, taking in the voice of the customer. How does that all weave together in a pricing strategy that we need to put together?
I'm a very strong proponent for having pricing under marketing responsibility, because I see the whole approach as marketing delivering like a virtual value circle. So it starts with marketing defining the value proposition, bringing the needs of the customer to, let's say, the innovation team. Then value is created in a product or in a service, but that value needs to be communicated, which is, again, marketing material, marketing activities, podcasts, webinars, whatever it is. That value needs to be delivered by sales, but with documentation to remind the customer what he bought, why he paid a price. This can be case studies, can be reference lists, whatever. And then most important, value needs to be captured, which is the actual sticker price you pay. But first of all, ideally, in an ideal value pricing world, negotiation with the customer, price is the last item you touch. You talk value first, and then price is the natural outcome. You negotiate a bit, but it should not be a shock. Oh, I have to pay this much for it. So for me, it's essential we, across all touch points with the customer, we consistently talk about what is the value we bring to you. Also highlight services, values that we don't price at all. Like in our case, customers can call anytime saying, I have an issue. The crane rail is coming loose. Can I send you a picture? Can you give me advice? Our sales guys do that. They don't send an invoice for that because we work with the customer on a long-term basis. And also, in this case, we do value pricing. To do effective value pricing, again, it starts with the customer. What are the value attributes in a product or service a customer really perceives as value adding to their business. These are the ones you use as arguments why you have a certain price point, because your product performs in this way, has a longer warranty, a longer lifetime, whatever it is for that customer. So you highlight that. In terms of the core, let's talk product you bring. You have arguments for why quality is so high, it has a price. But in the pricing discussion, you always, besides the core product, you talk about the augmented product, which is the sales team we have, the R&D team we have, the expertise we have that we give to the customer as part of the package price he pays. So I find it very important for customers to not just be sold a product, but to understand what he gets for it. Then he can make a decision. Is he looking for lowest price? Maybe then this is not the best partnership. Is he looking for value for money? Yes, then this is something we can talk, we can work together and come together in terms of also of customer lifetime value. We're not in it for a one-time transaction usually. You have a few of these customers, but we want to grow with the customer. For us, we want to grow share of wallet, but also look at it as a lifetime relationship, customer lifetime relationship. And so in this sense, again, price also communicates the value, because you cannot communicate value, have high quality, and then come with a very low price. Something makes me wonder then as a customer, what's wrong here? Something is wrong. Maybe the quality isn't as good as I was told. So it all needs to be consistent. And then the price is a differentiator and a proof of value. Of course, quality and everything must fall in place so that there's no disappointment after purchase, after installation. But I see price as a very active marketing mix element that needs to be embedded in all the other ways of communication and go-to-market strategies that we have. Otherwise, it's a short-term sale.
It makes so much sense in pricing as a function of value and perceived value. And if we don't know how our customers are going to perceive the value, we're very good at, as B2B companies, we know how to sell, we know how to create products, we know how to market, right? But and how to price, and every single one of them has to be tied to what's the most important from the customers and their perspective. Right. So back to your voice of the customer strategy. Without a voice of the customer strategy, you don't actually have the underpinnings for a pricing strategy either, do you?
Absolutely. I might think as a producer, oh, it's all about product lifetime. If we can deliver 10 years product lifetime, hey, customers must be happy. But if I don't talk to the customer, maybe that customer is selling on and just needs to guarantee 2 years warranty. Then he doesn't care if there's an additional 8 years he pays for. It's zero value for him. But unless you talk and understand the customer's business, you don't know this. You act on superficial data and wonder why you don't succeed or why you lose a customer after the first purchase.
I have to tell you, we've talked about so much. I feel like we need to do an entire series on what we're talking about here. But if there was one takeaway that you wanted the audience to have, to leave from this podcast episode, what's the most important takeaway that you would want them to have?
I would say to feel confident, especially to our marketing colleagues, we bring a bottom line impact. We drive profitable sales by having this full scale knowledge of and playing both a tactical and the strategic part. We not only add value, but we drive the company's bottom line results as well. And we can be confident about that.
And therefore confident for our seat at the table as
Absolutely.
Executives and part of that C-suite team.
Coming back to our usual challenge, yes.
Here's what I know. People are going to have questions. Would it be appropriate if I gave out a link to your LinkedIn profile that people could reach out?
Absolutely. I'd be happy to start a conversation. Sure.
Fantastic. It's the mission of this podcast is to bring different perspectives from different C-suite executives in the B2B world based on their insights, their years of experience, so that we all can learn. And I call that the rising tide that lifts all boats. And you absolutely did that today. So I just wanted to say thank you, Barbara.
Thanks, Steve. It's been a pleasure. Really enjoyed it.